Detective Ricardo felt a shiver run down his spine, even in the scorching heat of the Mexican night. He watched, terrified, the strange shadow moving on the wall, a sinister dance that seemed to suck the very light from the room. It was the same shadow that had tormented Isabella, the modern witch, in recent days. But this time, the shadow had eyes. Bright eyes, red as embers, that stared directly at him. Was this shadow just a sign? Or the harbinger of something much, much worse? Ricardo knew something terrible was about to happen. Something that could destroy everything he and Isabella had built. A danger that came from a place beyond human comprehension. Or, perhaps, very close by. The air was heavy, suffocating, as if an invisible veil trapped one's breath in Mexico City. Ricardo, our detective with a piercing gaze and an even deeper heart, felt the sweat trickle down his temples. But it wasn't just the heat. It was a cold that came from within. A feeling of imminent danger that chilled his blood. The shadow on the wall, that cursed shadow with ember eyes, remained there, pulsating, alive. It was as if it dared him, as if it knew he was there, watching, waiting. He remembered Isabella's gaze, the witch with a touch of mystery, and a strength he was only beginning to understand. The fear in her eyes was the same thing he felt. Isabella, with her long black hair and green eyes that shone like emeralds, sat at her small work table, littered with herbs, crystals, and ancient scrolls. She seemed fragile, but Ricardo knew that fragility was only a mask. Within her was a strength, a magic that transcended the world they knew. An ancient, ancestral force that was her greatest secret, and perhaps her greatest defense. She was reading an old book, the pages yellowed and full of strange symbols, her delicate fingers gliding over the letters, almost erased by time. Suddenly, the room trembled. Not a strong tremor, but a subtle, almost imperceptible vibration that only Ricardo and Isabella noticed. It was as if the ground itself was whispering a warning. Isabella closed the book with a start. Her eyes met Ricardo's, and he saw the fear reflected there, but also a fierce determination. "It's her," Isabella said, her voice low and hoarse, like the whisper of the wind in an old cemetery. "The shadow. She's approaching." Ricardo felt a shiver. The shadow on the wall pulsed with more intensity now, the red eyes seeming to burn the air. It wasn't just a shadow. It was a presence, an entity, something that came from another place, from another world. A dark, menacing place, full of mysteries they couldn't yet unravel. "But where did she come from?" Ricardo asked, his voice firm, although insecurity gnawed at him. He was a detective, used to dealing with criminals and dangers, but this was different. It was supernatural. Isabella stood up, her movements slow and calculated, like a snake preparing to strike. She picked up a small glass vial, filled with a bright, menacing liquid that glowed with its own light. "I don't know exactly," Isabella replied, her voice charged with unexpected strength. "But I know who's behind it. It's someone who wants to see us destroyed. Someone who wants to steal our power, our magic, to dominate everything." She looked at Ricardo, her green eyes fixed on his. "And this someone is much closer than we imagine." A knock on the door interrupted them, a loud, heavy sound that echoed in the small room like a distant thunderclap. Ricardo's heart was in his mouth. He knew the menacing shadow on the wall wasn't just a harbinger. It was a message, a threat of war. And the war was going to begin right there, on that suffocating night, in his house, in the heart of Mexico City. Whoever was on the other side of that door, he wasn't just a common enemy. He possessed a dark force capable of traversing dimensions. And Ricardo and Isabella would need to unite to face this threat. They would need to fight not only for their survival, but for all of existence. Ricardo prepared to open the door, his revolver firmly in his hand. The air was heavy with expectation. The tension was palpable. The darkness seemed to become even denser, and the promise of an epic battle between two worlds hung over them like a sword of Damocles. The battle for survival had begun. The door creaked open, revealing a hooded figure, tall and imposing, enveloped in shadows that seemed to suck the little light left in the room. Ricardo felt a chill deeper than any night chill. It was the icy touch of death. Isabella, beside him, held the magic vial firmly, her white fingers clenched around the glass that glowed with an inner, menacing and powerful light. The air became denser, heavier, charged with a dark energy that compressed their lungs. The hooded figure didn't speak, only extended a pale, bony hand, pointing to the shadow that continued to dance on the wall. The shadow now pulsed with more force, the red eyes glowing like infernal headlights fixed on Ricardo. It was a challenge, a demonstration of power, a clear and objective threat. Ricardo felt a visceral, primitive fear, but adrenaline propelled him. He would not retreat, not in the face of this danger, this threat to both worlds. Isabella whispered an ancient prayer, in a language Ricardo didn't understand, but he felt the weight of centuries in each syllable. The air trembled again, stronger this time, and the crystals on her table began to glow, emitting a pale light that contrasted with the menacing darkness of the hooded figure. It was a clash of forces, a silent battle waged between light and shadow, magic and, what was that? Ricardo couldn't define it. It was a malevolent energy that caused him a profound repulsion, an innate horror. Suddenly, the hooded figure threw a small, dark object that flew through the air with impressive speed. Ricardo, with sharp reflexes, managed to dodge it, but the object ricocheted off the wall, and a piece of plaster came off, revealing an ancient symbol, deeply engraved in the wall. It was a symbol of power, of black magic, ancient and frightening. Isabella's eyes widened. This symbol, it means... Before she could finish the sentence, the hooded figure let out a cry, a hoarse and strident laugh that echoed through the room, amplified by the tension and fear. The shadow on the wall stretched, contorted, transforming into a horrible creature, with sharp claws and a mouth full of teeth as sharp as razors. The creature lunged at Ricardo and Isabella, its red eyes glowing with fury. Ricardo drew his weapon, but he knew that bullets wouldn't work against a creature from another world. He needed something more, something magical. He remembered Isabella's herbs and crystals. He needed to use her power to combat the darkness. Isabella, with incredible courage, threw the glass vial containing the bright liquid at the creature. The liquid exploded in an intense glow, blinding the room for a moment. When the blinding light dissipated, the creature was recoiling, groaning, as if burning. But it wasn't defeated. Its red eyes still glowed with hatred. The hooded figure, taking advantage of the moment of distraction, made a quick move. He grabbed one of the ancient scrolls on Isabella's table and tore it to pieces. Isabella let out a sharp cry of despair and pain. Those scrolls were precious. They contained ancestral secrets, knowledge that had taken centuries to gather. Now it was destroyed, forever lost. It was a part of history, of magic, of the struggle between the two worlds, being erased before their eyes. Despair took over her body, and anger turned into unwavering strength. Ricardo saw the opportunity. With a leap, he threw himself at the hooded figure, knocking him to the ground. They fought, body against body, brute force against black magic, in a desperate and fierce struggle. The creature still howled, trying to help him, attacking Ricardo with its claws and teeth. But Ricardo fought with strength, with all the determination of a man who knows he is fighting for his own survival, and for the survival of the woman he loves. The fight would be long, and victory uncertain, but they would not give up. Not while there was a glimmer of hope, a breath of magic, a chance to survive the night that threatened to consume everything. The battle between two worlds was far from over. Detective Ricardo felt a shiver run down his spine, even in the heat of the Mexican night. The shadow on the wall, once just a dark stain, now had eyes. Eyes red as embers, staring at him with silent fury. Isabella, the modern witch, was pale, but her green eyes shone with an ancestral strength. She whispered, her voice almost disappearing into the dense, heavy air. "It's Azrael. He's here." A subtle tremor shook the room. It wasn't an earthquake, but a sinister vibration, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Isabella's book, filled with ancient symbols, fell from the table. The yellowed pages scattered on the floor like dead petals. Ricardo knew at that moment that it wasn't just a menacing shadow. It was a war for dimensions, for power, for love. A violent knock on the door. It wasn't a polite knock, a request to enter. It was a bang, a brutal announcement of invasion. Ricardo's heart beat hard against his ribs. He held his revolver firmly, but he felt that the weapon would be useless against what was to come. Isabella, with quick and precise movements, grabbed a small glass vial containing an iridescent and menacing liquid. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her eyes were full of determination. It was time to face the enemy, no matter the cost. The door burst open, revealing a tall, imposing hooded figure, immersed in deep shadows that seemed to suck the very light from the room. The figure was sinister, imposing, a harbinger of misfortune. From the hood came black threads, thin as doll hair, snaking towards the corners of the room. Ricardo felt an icy chill down his spine, a premonition of death that froze him to the bone. The hooded figure didn't speak, only extended its pale, bony hand, pointing to the shadow on the wall. The shadow, now a grotesque creature, writhed, its ember eyes burning like infernal torches. It was Azrael, the terror that transcended worlds. An atavistic, primordial fear took hold of Ricardo, but his willpower kept him firm. He couldn't falter. He had Isabella, and he would protect her, no matter the cost. Isabella whispered an ancient invocation in a language that sounded as old as the earth itself. The crystals on her table glowed, pulsating with a bright energy, contrasting with the malignant darkness that filled the room. It was a battle of forces, light against shadow, magic against pure horror, a confrontation of worlds and dimensions. The hooded figure threw a small, black object that flew through the air like an invisible projectile. Ricardo narrowly dodged it, the object hitting the wall. A piece of plaster fell, revealing an ancient symbol engraved on the wall, a symbol of dark power, of black magic, as old as history itself. It was a symbol that Isabella recognized immediately, and her face became paler than before. She muttered something about an ancient spell, something of such profound power, capable of opening portals. Portals to what? Ricardo dared not imagine. The shadow creature advanced. Sharp claws, teeth like razors. The hooded figure laughed, a hoarse and horrible laugh, as he tore the ancient scrolls, destroying ancestral knowledge, centuries of knowledge and secrets. Isabella screamed, the scream of someone watching their own history disappear into crumbs. Ricardo fired his revolver, the bullets ricocheting without causing any damage to the monstrous creature that continued to advance. Isabella threw the glass vial, the iridescent liquid exploding in a blinding flash. When the light dissipated, the shadow creature was recoiling, but not defeated. Its red eyes still glowed with fury. Ricardo grabbed a handful of herbs and crystals, improvising a magic shield, protecting Isabella. The hand-to-hand combat began. A brutal battle, a deadly dance between light and shadow. The hooded figure was strong, agile, but Ricardo wasn't just a detective. He was a man in love, a man determined to protect his love. The fight intensified, a deadly dance of punches and kicks, of magic and resistance. Ricardo could feel the figure's malignant energy, trying to drain him, to suck his life force. But Ricardo held firm, fighting with the strength of 10 men, driven by the promise of love. He felt Isabella's gaze, her trust in him, and it strengthened him. He could not fail. He couldn't leave Isabella alone in the face of the terror that haunted both worlds. The battle reached its climax. Their survival, the future of their love, existence itself, hung on a thread as fragile as the glow of the magic vial. The war had only just begun, and the climax was only at the beginning. The fight was frenetic, a deadly dance between Ricardo, Isabella, and the dark forces that surrounded them. Ricardo, with the immense strength of a wounded lion, struck the hooded figure, while Isabella, with precise and elegant movements like a feline, threw herbs and crystals, creating a protective barrier against the dark creature that advanced. The creature was terrifying, a nightmare-given form, with claws sharp as blades and teeth that seemed to want to tear the soul. But the love between Ricardo and Isabella was an even greater force, capable of defying even the powers of hell. In the midst of the confusion, a scream from Isabella cut through the air. The dark creature grabbed one of the pieces of the scroll torn by the hooded figure, and, with a quick movement, swallowed the fragment of ancestral knowledge. Its eyes shone even more intensely, and a malignant glow emanated from its body, radiating a wave of terror that made Ricardo stagger. The creature grew, becoming more monstrous, stronger, more terrifying. The symbols of the scroll, now imprinted on the monster's body, seemed to pulse with a malignant energy, as if the darkness itself came to life. Ricardo felt a tremor run through his body, a fear unlike any he had ever known. The shadow creature was feeding on the magic, on the ancestral knowledge, becoming more powerful, invincible. Isabella, her face marked by despair and determination, cast a look at Ricardo, her eyes shining with the urgency of a desperate situation. She needed something more potent, something that could stop the growing threat, but her energy reserves were dwindling. At this moment, the hooded figure, wounded but still standing, used the distraction to fire a kind of black arrow, made of dark energy, with deadly precision, hitting Isabella's heart. Ricardo screamed, the world collapsing around him. Isabella fell at his feet, lifeless, but with a mysterious gleam in her eyes. Ricardo felt that she hadn't really died, that a part of her had gone to another world. The shadow creature, fueled by ancestral magic, roared triumphantly. The symbol of black magic that was engraved on the wall shone intensely, opening a dark and nebulous portal in the center of the room. From that portal, other creatures, as monstrous as the first, emerged, their red eyes burning the air, ready to invade the world. The hooded figure disappeared into the portal, laughing sadistically. Ricardo, kneeling beside Isabella's body, felt an overwhelming despair, but a last vestige of hope ignited in his heart. He had to find a way to save Isabella, to save the world, even if it meant facing terror in other worlds. He had to break the curse. But how? On the floor, beside Isabella's body, he finds a small piece of the ancestral scroll, the last vestige of memory, a glimmer of hope on the dark horizon that opened before him. The war between the two worlds was only just beginning.